What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video. In this video we're going to be continuing to explore LON format, which is sort of the hypothetical what-if format that takes place before Android format happens. Now, I've already covered how the Hayabusa deck does get a big buff in LON format, and I think the only real other deck that gets a huge buff in this format is the Burn deck, as Magic Cylinder is at 3 copies. I know a lot of people didn't really like my Burn video as much for Android format because I wasn't able to activate Magic Cylinder, but frankly with the card at 1 copy it's just very inconsistent. Here we've got 3 copies available to us, so we should be able to fire this thing at least once. And I do think that that makes the deck pretty good. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the individual card by card here, as this is essentially the burn list that I had for Imperial format. All I did was I sided the Mystical Space Typhoons and swapped in Magic Cylinders. I do think it's very good to have the Mystical Space Typhoons in the side deck though, because Solemn Wishes is a thing, so you want this here to clear that. But beyond that, if you want a deeper sort of breakdown of this, honestly, just watch my Imperial Burn video, and that should give you pretty much what you need to know. The Magic Cylinders are just the icing on the cake here, as they provide a strong defensive option that also burns your opponent. So they're really, really good for the deck. And having 3 of them means that you'll likely be able to draw into them over the course of the game, and be able to use them to great effect. So let's dive into some games to see how they actually perform. Okay, we've got a game here against Aratos. Unclear what they're playing. We're playing the sort of burn deck, playing 3 Magic Cylinders here. But we're going to just dive into the game, go for some rock, paper, scissors, and we will manage to win that, so we'll be able to go first, which is very good for this deck, as this deck really does want to go first. It wants to set up its chain energies, Magic Cylinders, etc., and going first is a good way to do that. This is a pretty killer hand here. Wow. We've got 2 chain energies in the opener, Giant Germ, Cyberjar, Raigeki. I mean, this is just insane. So we're going to start off with a pretty standard play here, just setting the Germ, setting a Ceasefire, and then activating 1 chain energy and passing. The reason we do this is if they've got Heavy Storm, we don't want to lose both of our chain energies, even though, you know, having 2 chain energies is super, super good. I do think it's best to play a little bit conservatively here. Maybe I should have just gone all in for this, but I don't really think it matters too much here. They're going to pay 5, bring out a Kaiku, and just attack into the Germ. This signals that they likely don't have a Heavy Storm in hand, or else they would have like immediately fired that. So we're going to bring out 2 more Germs from our deck, and they're going to pay 1,000, set 2 more, and pass back to us. And we draw a 3rd chain energy. Wow, that's actually insane. We got to think about exactly what to do here, but what we're going to do is we're going to set 1 chain energy, activate another, and then activate the 3rd. We figure that they didn't have heavy last turn. If they set a heavy last turn, then they've really outplayed us, as, you know, they really baited us into thinking that they didn't have one. But I figure that it's really likely that they didn't have one. So these chain energies will likely just stay on the field and just really prevent them from getting aggressive, and also cost them a fair amount of life points. We were also debating, instead of just immediately going for the chain energy play, just firing the Raigeki and then attacking in with the Germs, as the only thing that really punishes that is Mirror Force. But I guess, like, Call of the Haunted also punishes that. There's some weird things that they could do to really make that backfire on us. So we're going to save the Raigeki, just switch the Germs to defense, pass back to them. They're going to go for a Jar of Greed here, draw 1. They're going to go for another Jar of Greed, draw another. And, you know, this is kind of rough for us, that it could have let them draw into heavy. But if they didn't draw into heavy, we're feeling very good about this, as each of those Jars of Greeds just turns into another card. And to use that card, they've got to pay 1,500 life points. And they've only got 4 activations because they're at 6,000. So we feel very good about this. They're just going to attack into one of our Germs here. We're going to let that go through. We could have activated Ceasefire here potentially just to, you know, get more damage in. But I feel like this is fine. They're going to pay 1,500, set a monster, pass back to us, and Sangan, I think, can just wrap this up. We're going to bring out the Sangan, fire a Ceasefire here, deal 2,000 damage, go for a Raigeki, and that will be the end of the game, because we can just attack in with the Sangan and Germ and deal 2,000 damage to them. Even if they had like a Karibo in hand, which most decks aren't playing, that would drop them down to 1,000, and then they wouldn't be able to activate anything with our triple chain energy up. So game 1 went pretty smoothly. We didn't draw into the Magic Cylinders, so we didn't really get to show off that part of the deck, but we did get to show how disgusting triple Ceasefire can be if you're able to set it up. And we're just going to go into game 2 and hope that we are able to do the cylinder plays, as Oh, well, there's a cylinder, and that's what people want to see. I mean, On my last burn video, a lot of people were kind of disappointed that they didn't get to see the cylinders, but here, hopefully we'll get to see them now. We're going to fire Painful. They've got Imperial order. We're going to fire an MST on that Imperial and then send 5. Adding the Sangan to hand was a mistake. Misclick. And the 5 we're going to choose is a Jinzo, Witch, Sangan, Cretan, and Chain Energy. I think I might have wanted to send an additional Sangan on top of the Chain Energy, but we've got a Tomato in hand, and we want to have the option of going into one of our recruiters off of the Tomato at some point. Like, Germ is, of course, very good to go in off Tomato, but there are some situations where you'd rather just go into Sangan. So I figured leaving 1 left in the deck would be pretty decent. And this is a pretty tough choice for them here, as if they give us a Spear Cretan, we can get back any of the monsters we just sent to grave. If they give us a Recruiter, then we can get a Search from our deck. If they get us a Jinzo here, then since we're playing so many floaters, we could summon that out pretty easily. And Chain Energy can just make things really tough for them. So I don't envy their decision here. They will ultimately give us the Chain Energy, which I think is a reasonable choice. So we're going to add that to hand, and then we're just going to kind of wall up. We're going to set a Tomato, set a Call, and fire Chain Energy. We set the Call to potentially bring back Jinzo here, because there are situations where we'd want to do that, especially if they've got a Heavy Storm, which they might, given that they only committed an Imperial order to board. So if they fire Heavy Storm here, then we can Chain Call, get back Jinzo, which would be pretty nice. Looks like they're just going to bring out a Kaiku, flip up a Witch, and attack in. And luckily for us, we've got a Tomato here, so that will resist their Witch. And they're going to fire a Confiscation here. That's pretty brutal for us, but it is dropping them down by 1,500. They're going to get rid of this Change of Heart here and pass back to us. We drew a Raigeki, which we might want to use here, but I'm feeling pretty fine just switching Tomato to attack and hitting into the Witch. They'll get a Search here, so they'll be able to get something to potentially deal with this Tomato. But we've got the Raigeki to deal with that, and we've also got Magic Cylinder to stop their Kaiku attack from going through. If they bring out an additional Kaiku, we can always call the Haunted back our Jinzo before they hit in. So I feel very good about this, and we're just going to pay that 5, set the Cylinder, pass back to them. And they're going to fire a Snatch Steal here, which is extremely worrying. They're going to tribute over that for a Jinzo. We could have potentially Chain Call the Haunted to the Snatch Steal, but that doesn't really do much for us as they just crash the Jinzos, get in for 18 with Kaiku, so it's kind of iffy. But as is, they're going to be able to banish the Jinzo here anyways. So it's kind of unfortunate for us. We're going to take a lot of damage here as well, and that's going to make Chain Energy kind of rough for us. We do luckily have the Raigeki here, so we'll be able to fire that, clear their board, and feel pretty good about that. But we're just going to pass back to them because we don't have any way to really capitalize on this. We could have potentially brought back one of our monsters with Call of the Haunted. Like, bringing back a Witch would be nice. We could attack in for 11. I think in hindsight, that probably was the best thing to do, as now our Jinzo is gone. And either way, if they use Spell and Trap removal on it, we still get a Search. But I think that we're going to save it just to be safe here. Maybe I shouldn't have done this, but we'll see. They're going to bring out a Gemini Elf and attack us directly. And we could potentially call the Haunted back something like a Tomato. But we're just going to go for the Magic Cylinder because I figure this drops them down pretty low. And we feel pretty good about this. And if they were at 1100, I mean, if they were dropped down by 1100 from the Witch attack, then we could have potentially won here with this Just Desserts. We could have searched a Cannon Soldier off the Witch. And then gotten in for 1,500 damage. But, I mean, I think this is fine. We're still in a pretty good spot. We're just going to set these 2 Just Desserts. If they do commit another monster to board, that means they just lose the game here. So, we're going to set those just to be safe. They're going to think a bit about this, and they're going to preemptively fire a Mystical Space Typhoon on one of our new back row, just in case we've got, like, another Magic Cylinder, or if we've got, like, a Mirror Force. I think this makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, it will backfire for them. We've got a Just Desserts there, and because they've used up Mystical Space Typhoon on that, we'll be able to actually protect ourselves here with a Call of the Haunted, bringing back this Mystic Tomato. And we're extremely close to lethal damage. All we have to do is crash our Tomato into their Elf and get out a Cannon Soldier. That's 500. Just Desserts into another 500, but we're not quite there. And Mirror Force isn't quite going to do it. We're just going to set the Mirror Force to protect our Tomato and then potentially get in for damage next turn. But I do feel pretty good about this. They're going to fire a Raigeki off it, just get rid of our Tomato. And And then they're going to go for a Mystical Space Typhoon here, dropping down to 300, which does enable us to fire this Just Desserts and win the game. I think that really does show how brutal this deck can be. And the Magic Cylinder actually did come up, and being able to drop your opponent down by like potentially around a fourth of their starting life total can be really, really good while also protecting yourself. So I do think that the inclusion of 3 Magic Cylinders does make the burn deck like pretty formidable in this format. Definitely not unbeatable. The deck can really struggle after siding, as you may see in the next match that I've got to show for you. But I do think it's still very, very good. Anyways, we've got another match with this deck, so let's dive into that now. Okay, we've got another game against Aratos here. We're playing the same decks. We just went straight into a rematch after the first one. And we are going to go first again, and going first really does help this deck a lot, especially when you open Chain Energy like every game like I have. We're going to Pot of Greed, draw 2, set the Momonga, set a Cylinder, and then fire a Chain Energy here, pass back to them. If they've got heavy, this is of course bad, but we do have another Cylinder in hand, so I'm not too concerned about that. They're going to go for a Mystical Space Typhoon, sniping the Chain Energy, which, you know, good for them. They don't actually take the 500 there. They're just going to bring out the Tomato after Chain Energy's gone. We're going to gain 8,000 off of this Momonga, bring out 2 more Momongas, which is very nice. If we draw more Chain Energies later, these will be good at getting back our life points. Oh, that Delinquent Duo is really rough. We want them not to hit the Raigeki. I think we're fine as long as they don't hit the Raigeki here. Unfortunately, they do hit the Raigeki. We got to think about exactly what we want to send. I think they don't have many monsters on board set up, so we could potentially send the Just Desserts. We've already got 1 Cylinder, so we could send the Cylinder. Kind of iffy. We're going to send the Just Desserts, though. I do think that that's probably correct, but it's a very tough choice there. We're just going to set the Sangan, pass back to them. We figure if they've got like Raigeki, we at least get value off this. They're just going to set 1 attack into the Sangan there. It's Sangan. We're going to search out a Man-Eater Bug to potentially pop that Mystic Tomato. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. And since they did set 1, we're just going to bring out this Mystic Tomato. We don't need to commit our Man-Eater Bug to board just in case they've got a Man-Eater Bug. And we're just going to attack into that set to see what it is. It's a Cyber Jar, so that'll pop the entire board here. We won't get our boost off of Momonga, which is kind of unfortunate. But it looks like they don't draw a monster, which is very nice. We're just going to get a Germ and a Jar, and then some very good spells here as well. We could potentially summon both in attack if we don't want to pop our own Germ with the Cyber Jar. But I figure we've got a Cylinder to protect the Cyber Jar from whatever monster they potentially bring out. So I figure this should be fine, just setting the Cyber Jar here and attacking in with the Germ. They do have a Mirror Force, so, you know, they're going to be able to deal with our Germ eventually anyways. So I figured that this is fine. So we're just going to hit in with the Germ. Fire a Confiscation here, try and snipe a card out of their hand. Unfortunately, they do have an Imperial Order, so that will prevent the Confiscation from going through. And we could fire the Chain Energy here, as Imperial Order doesn't prevent us from activating spells, it just negates their effects. So we could put this up as sort of a disincentive to let the Imperial Order drop. But I'm just going to play it a bit safe, set another Cylinder, and pass back to them. And they're going to indeed keep the order up, so, I mean, that's fine. This is basically another sort of burn spell here. They're going to bring out a Bazoo, and they're going to debate whether to pump it up. They're not going to, which I think is the smart move here. And we're going to fire a Magic Cylinder here, dropping them down by 1,600. They're going to set 3 and pass back to us. And we draw another Germ. We're just going to try attacking in to the Bazoo here. This actually wouldn't be a good play if it actually connects, as we've got a Germ in hand, so we're only bringing out 1 additional monster. It wouldn't be bad, but it's just kind of awkward here. But we're trying to basically bluff that we have 2 Germs left in deck, and we have ways to sort of make this a lethal push. It's because we want to get them to use up the Mirror Force here, and they do indeed use up the Mirror Force on that. And now our Cyber Jar can get us a lot more value here, as it's not popping one of our own monsters. We're going to think about this a bit, and we're actually going to set this Chain Energy here. I think this is a mistake. I think it should have just fired the Chain Energy, just to sort of start dealing them more damage, especially if they let the Imperial Order lapse, and then attack into Cyber Jar, get a bunch of cards to hand that they want to play. I think that the Chain Energy being on field would be very annoying for them to deal with, but we set it, and I do think that that's a little bit of a misplay, but let's see if it actually comes up here. They're going to Jar of Greed. They are indeed going to pay 7 to keep the IO up, so it looks like it didn't really matter either way here. They're going to attack in to our Cyber Jar. We're just going to fire this Magic Cylinder yet again. And they're just going to set one, pass back to us. And I feel like we can just win the game here if we bring out Cannon Soldier. I mean, we could just use Prio and cost them 500 and then making them dead to like a germ push. Or just activate this chain energy as well, making them unable to commit anything else to board. I think that probably is the move, just summon Cannon Soldier, use Prio. But I get a little bit greedy here. I'm going to summon Cannon Soldier not using Prio, because if we don't use Prio here, we can potentially tribute over the Cyber Jar and the Cannon Soldier. I mean, we could have just tributed the Cyber Jar with the Cannon Soldier here, but then that puts us at risk if they've got Trap Hole. Then they can hit in with the Bazoo next turn, so I think the move here was just to summon Cannon Soldier, Prio, tribute itself. Unfortunately, they do have a Torrential Tribute here, so we will get a little punished. I think I really should have activated the Chain Energy here just to have it on field, as that reduces them to 2 activations of a card if they let the Imperial Order lapse, and that can be pretty brutal. They are just going to let that Imperial Order lapse and fire a Mystical Space Typhoon. And again, I should have just activated this. They would have dropped down to 400, and they would have been able to do things after this, but we know about the Premature Burial, and that would have dropped them below the range where they can actually use that. So they do fire the Mystical Space Typhoon on the Chain Energy, so they are able to do stuff here. They're going to go for the Call of the Haunted, bring back this Bazoo, banishing 3, and then they're going to hit in for 2,500, not 1,500. They're going to set one, set another, pass back to us. And we can just go for a Dark Hole and then summon Germ, attack in. But I figure they've already used up Mirror Force, so they don't have any way to stop Germ in the battle phase. So I'm just going to summon Germ first. If they've got Torrential Tribute, they have to fire it here. If they don't, they've got like Trap Hole or something, we can just activate the Dark Hole. Either way, though, we've got the Cylinder potentially representing lethal next turn anyways, so I feel fine with this. We're just going to attack in to the Bazoo with the Giant Germ here. Bring out another Giant Germ. And that should be the end of the game, and indeed is the end of the game. So I think that game showed how devastating these cylinders can be. We were able to get off 2 cylinder activations there, and that was just incredibly brutal for them. They dropped down a lot. And I think without the cylinders, we wouldn't have won that game. So I do think that the 3 cylinders is incredibly good here. And I think it makes the deck a lot better. I don't think it makes this deck like tier 0 or anything. There are ways to deal with this. But it does make the deck a lot better than it is in Android format. They're going to go for a duo, fire a 1 and hit a Momonga, and then we just discard a cylinder because we've got another cylinder in hand, and we want to preserve our monsters here over preserving our cylinders, as, you know, if they've got ways to deal with these monsters, then we're kind of in trouble. I think maybe I should have just preserved a cylinder, given that they likely side into a lot of spell and trap removal, but I think ultimately this is fine. We draw a Sangan, though. And if we had known that we were drawing a Sangan, then it definitely would have been correct to probably send the Tomato. But unfortunately, you can't really predict that. So you kind of got to make your decisions based on what's going on in the moment. They flip up a Maneater Bug, though, so that will pop the Sangan. And if we hadn't drawn the Sangan, then we would have been in a lot of trouble here. So I do think that it was probably correct in the moment to send the Cylinder, although it is a bit unfortunate here. We are going to draw just desserts. That's very good. We accidentally misclick here, clicking discard the desserts, so they will know what that is, but they can just play like they don't know it, as this is basically for testing. It's not like a competitive game, although we are trying to be as competitive possible in playing it just to see how good these decks actually are. But they're going to go for a Painful, and this is a pretty good selection of cards here. We could potentially just give them like a Comfy or a Forceful, given that, you know, if they Forceful back a monster to deck, we can use Tomato to get out a Germ, or just Germ to get out other Germs. So it's not the worst here. But I think Jar of Greed gives them the least off of this Painful, so we will just give them a Jar of Greed. It can get them another card, which is annoying, but ultimately this is fine. They're going to bring out this Bazoo, and I feel okay about that because our Spear Cretin is still looking pretty good. We can get back this Momonga and then gain some life points while thinning our deck. Unfortunately, they go for a Nobleman of Crossout, and that is incredibly brutal for us. Spear Cretin is a really good card in this deck, and they can also get in for a ton of damage here. They're going to attack in for 4,350, and that is a lot. We're in a very dangerous position here. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Imperial Order, which is okay, but not the best. We do set the Tomato here, as if we set the Germ and they attack in with the Maneater first, then they just win the game if they buff up Bazoo fully. It's not necessarily the most likely thing that will happen, but it is something that can happen. Also, you know, if we set the tomato here, they attack him with Bazoo, we get out like a Sangan or a Witch, we can search out a Cyber Jar, and that will potentially deal with their board. So I feel okay about this. Imperial Order also helps out a lot as well, I think. This can protect our tomato from getting Raigeki'd or Nobleman'd or etc. They're going to attack in with the Bazoo there. We're going to search out a Witch. This has more attack, so we take less damage from this. So we take 750 instead of 850, which actually could matter a lot given we do play things like Chain Energy and stuff. So that's 2 activations versus 1. Activating Chain Energy here isn't necessarily the best if we do draw it, and I don't even think we're going to use it because we do draw it, but like it really hurts us a lot more than it hurts our opponent at this point. So we're just going to set it here. And they're just going to attack into what they know is a Cyber Jar, and we're going to fire Jet Desserts as they do that, because this is probably the most monsters they'll be able to get on board here. But we're going to pop everything on their field. Unfortunately, they have a Sangan, so they'll be able to get a search off this as well. But we do get a Germ, which is okay. They're going to get out a Tomato, so they'll be able to bring that to field and attack. They add a Snatch Steal, a Reborn, a Heavy, and a Mystical Space Typhoon. And this is really rough, because that can deal with our Imperial Order here. So very unfortunate, and this might just be the end of the game here, but we'll see. We're going to add this Ceasefire, and this Just Desserts, and this Painful, and lastly this Mirror Force. So they are going to search off the Sangan and grab a Cannon Soldier, and this will indeed actually just be the end of the game here. They're going to fire Heavy, we're going to fire this Imperial Order. They've got the Mystical Space Typhoon for the Heavy. They'll be able to bring out this Cannon Soldier to beat off the Tomato, and they've got a Reborn to bring that back. Before we go out of this game, I want to mention something pretty interesting. They sided into Magic Cylinders of their own, which I think is a really neat tech against the Burn deck, as the Burn deck does like to attack in for some damage, and Cylinder can really catch it off guard here. But yep, that is just going to be the end of this game. And that's occasionally how this goes, especially post-siding. You know, they had a lot more spell and trap removal for our deck, which I think makes a lot of sense, as Burn is a very back row heavy deck. And that back row removal can really mess up your Magic Cylinders, can mess up your Chain Energies, can mess up a lot of things. So I do think that, you know, it made sense that we lost game 2, as they are pretty heavily sided against it. And we were also going second. The deck really wants to go first, and I mean, this hand really shows why. This is an incredible hand. We're going to set the Tomato, set a Cylinder, and then fire Chain Energy here. We maybe even didn't have to set the Cylinder, as we've got Jinzo, and the play that we're kind of setting up for is they attack into Tomato. We, you know, search something, summon Jinzo, and then get in for a lot of damage. But I like having Cylinder just on field, just in case they've got something to deal with the Tomato. We can potentially prevent them from hitting in. They're going to bring out a Gemini Elf after getting rid of the Chain Energy here. We'll be able to get out a Sangan here. We could have actually Cylindered that, as it did a lot of damage, and Cylinder won't really be as useful when Jinzo's on field. But I figure it's better just getting a more valuable Jinzo summon here. So we draw another Cylinder, and I mean, that's really good. We're not going to commit that to board as well, because we've already got Jinzo on field. We don't need to shut off all of our back row. We are going to attack into that Elf, just pass back to them, see what they do here. They're going to set one, set another, pass back to us. This is a little bit worrying. If that's like a Man-Eater bug, they can pop our Jinzo, but honestly, we're not too upset about that, as we do have this Cylinder here, and with the Sangan here, we can potentially get in some value if it's like a Cyber Jar. So we're going to attack in with the Jinzo first, as if it is a Man-Eater bug, and we attack in with the Sangan first, they can just pop our Jinzo, preventing us from getting any damage in. It is a Sangan, though, and they'll search out a Man-Eater bug, so this worked out incredibly well for us. We've got Raigeki to clear the bug next turn. We're just going to fire this Chain Energy now. I feel very good about this. This is a very tough spot for our opponent to be in. They're going to fire a Reborn here to get back a Sangan, which I think makes a fair amount of sense. And then they're going to pay 5 and set this Man-Eater bug, pass back to us. The reason they did this is if we've got a way to deal with the Man-Eater bug, or if we do the play that we did last turn, attacking into Man-Eater bug with Jinzo, then attacking him with Sangan, we can't actually get in more damage with this. Unfortunately, the Raigeki will be able to clear that board away. So we'll fire the Raigeki. They'll get a search here, but ultimately it won't matter, because by summoning the Mystic Tomato, we're able to get in 4,800 points of damage, which will prevent them from committing any more cards to field due to Chain Energy, and that will be the end of the game there. Yeah, their back row, nothing really that they could use under Jinzo. So unfortunately, they did just lose this game in a very sacky way, I think, because we just had all the cards to make this work. Like, I mean, I don't know. We just got insanely lucky this last game. And that can happen playing the burn deck with the cylinders as well. We didn't actually get to use the cylinders this game, but having them there as backup in case these sort of more aggressive plays fell through is very, very nice. And I think really made me feel a lot safer going for these more aggressive plays. But I hope that these games really showed how powerful this deck can be with 3 cylinders as disposal. I think some of the games even showed how powerful the deck can be, you know, at base, like even in Android format. I think they'd probably be around this powerful. But the thing is that we did win a fair amount of games with the cylinders. I think we won like 2 of the games out of the 4 games that we won with the cylinders. And when you're playing matches like this, that can really make a difference. So I do think that the cylinders really do put this deck over the edge, pumping it up to tier 1 in LON format, even if they're not like a tier 0 threat. But let me know what you all think of this deck down in the comments below. I look forward to talking with you as always because everyone has different opinions on these sort of things. I'm sure that some of you think that the cylinders make this tier 0. I'm sure that some probably think that the deck is still tier 2 or worse and I just got lucky in these games. But I'm curious to hear all your thoughts and discuss as always. And if you like this sort of content going through all these obscure formats of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, definitely subscribe to the channel. This was my last video that I was planning on doing on LON format, as really the only things that changes from Android are the burn deck and the Hayabusa deck, and I've covered both of those now. I mean, there are some slight changes that you can do to the standard beast spellcaster list. Maybe playing 3 magic cylinders in that deck is also something to potentially do, but I think that change is a bit less interesting, and I think a lot of people have sort of gotten a little bit exhausted with Android format. I've been in Android format for quite some time, and so it'll be nice to dive into some new stuff. I'm going to be releasing like a short primer on the next format that I'm going to dive into, which is Silly Snake format, which is another one of these like unlimited formats that no one really plays, but are fun to sort of explore because of how broken they are. So look forward to that. It should change a lot. And if you do want to play any of the games in these formats that I show off on the channel, then we've got a Discord server where you can play all of them. Link will be in the description down below, but it's a great place to find games in these cool and diverse formats. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.